What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 32 of Immortal Minds. We're back after a short hiatus, but we're back with a good one. We've got ourselves Puckett, of course. How you doing, Puckett?
I'm doing excellent, man. No more Reynas in my matchmaking games. I'm fired up, Dan.
We'll see about that. We've also got Tailored as well, returning guest. How you doing, Tailored?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm also really excited for our final guest today. First time on the show, Syyko. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here. Hello, everyone.
And you know what? I think I want to start this discussion by finding out a little bit more about you, Syyko, because you're, I think, along with XSET as a whole, you guys have been kind of rocketing up the leaderboards and having great performances of late. And I think you'll be more unfamiliar in terms of your reputation in the scene. So would you like to kind of start us off a little bit by giving us a background? Where did you come from? How did you become the coach of XSET? How did that all come about?
Sure. Well, back in my teenage years, used to play a lot of America's Army, did some COD 4 Pro Mod, Black Ops 1. And then I went off to college, concentrated on girls and working IT jobs, floated around for a while. A couple years ago, got into hosting some Rust servers that kind of pulled me back into the gaming world. Got back into esports, got an offer to coach from my good friends at Sedated in Battalion, moving over into Valorant. So that was a jump into the coaching world, and I realized it was instantly for me. I love coaching. I love developing players. I love the strategy side of things. So it's been a fun adventure. So after Sedated disbanded, moved on to Lazarus, and then now on XSET.
That's kind of awesome. Dan, if you don't mind me jumping in real quick,
man.
2 key notes here. How the hell did you get into America's Army 2? Not even America's Army 1. Like, kids were playing Halo, Call of Duty, Battlefield. How does one find themselves on America's Army 2?
I don't know, man. I was so young at the time, you just kind of play what your friends are playing. And I had some friends that were playing America's Army, and I ended up being really good at it. Got picked up as a backup for a Cal Invite team, like really young. So I don't know, just kind of fell into it. It was a really fun game. I think it was 4v4 at the time, excessively slow, a really slow, methodical, meticulous game. So it's a lot of fun.
And then the quick follow-up on this one is, of course, you mentioned you came in with a battalion squad, a lot of teams coming from all over the world. We've seen PUBG teams, Fortnite players, Overwatch players, CS, the whole gambit coming into Valorant. How did the battalion players transition to this title?
Well, Battalion had a really big community. Well, not extremely big, but had a solid community that thrived for a bit, and then all of a sudden the game died. So you had a lot of teams, groups of guys who were looking for a new game to play, and a lot of them looked over at Valorant. So we moved over into Valorant with Seth, Tanaka, and Wilski, and for a while ran with that squad in beta. Obviously, that squad dissolved. Seth went on to Space Station Gaming. Wilski and I went on to Lazarus, and then I went on to XSET from there.
Got it.
Well, I think like we have so much to talk about today that it's. I'm glad that people have a small introduction as to who you are. We're going to be talking a lot more about coaching. Obviously, Tailored is here as well, so we've got the coach episode. And I think what we need to do is we need to address what's been going on right now. We just had a patch coming out today. Puck had already referenced it. We had some changes to Reyna, and I want to start with the agent changes, and then we'll go into some of the weapon changes, and maybe what's going on with the force by meta and so on that's happening at the moment. But firstly, this Reyna change, buff or nerf, what do we think of this change?
Taylor, I want you to hit this one because I feel like at lower levels and ranked, it's definitely going to have an impact on Reyna. Will it change the way games are played at the pro level as well?
I think it kind of seems like a nerf for ranked and the lower level players. You're seeing her all the time in pugs and high level, low level, wherever. But I think it could actually be a buff for competitive. Mostly just because you can use your teammates' assists as you can use them as orbs for both your charges, right? Not just ult charges.
Yeah, basically any time you've damaged someone, you get the soul orb off of them as you would if you got a kill previously to this patch.
Yeah, so I think that's big because there's a lot of times where people get assists and you're not rewarded for them. So I think it's actually interesting to see a character that gets rewarded for assisting. And a lot of times when you double up Reyna with another Flash character, she's second entry anyway. So if you put a Reyna and a Phoenix together, that's going to be a really deadly combo, which is what we used to run on. We ran like Reyna Phoenix combos on Haven and Bind for a while, just to have that strong entry potential. And comps like that will definitely benefit from this.
Syyko, do you think the money impact is going to have a big difference here? It's $100 increase or 100 credit increase, 200 now per dismiss and devour. Is that a big deal?
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think the 2 cap is the bigger deal, and I'm honestly more interested to see how being able to dismiss off an assist is going to play into the professional side of things. I agree that at a ranked level it might be a bit of a nerf, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about how this is going to play out at the top level. There's a lot of really good players right now that are maining Reyna and doing a really good job of it. So if you're giving them the ability to escape untraded off of an assist, that seems like a buff to me.
She's going to be a pistol nightmare still, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because the Reyna and the Stinger, we'll be talking more about the Stinger changes in a moment. But as it was, Reyna plus Stinger was just so ridiculous because you can just always get that kill and dismiss off of it. And I feel like with the ability to play, like to have to be more conservative with the moments you're picking what you're dismissing off of, it feels like that does feel like a nerf to a degree for me at least. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I'm really curious. It does seem like there are a lot of people on the fence at the moment. Unless there's anything else to add on that, we can start talking about Yoru, who also had some changes as well. We have now it being more obvious for you exactly what's happening with gate crash when you're sending that around the map. It's more obvious, like what will, like on the mini map, where the sound will actually be heard from. Which I know that's been a huge issue with Yoru, is that his abilities seem very telegraphed. So that seems like it should be, you should be able to guarantee safer teleports in that sense. Do you guys think that they're hitting the mark with some of these changes? The dimensional drift changes, the ult changes, I think are pretty good as well. But first of all, that teleport.
I think the big issue with his teleport is just how far enemies can hear it. I think being able to see how far the enemies can hear it will help in like identifying when to make those plays. But I think the players who really dedicated to learning Yoru know that stuff anyways and still aren't finding success with him. So I don't know if this is necessarily going to give him the buff that he needs to be competitive enough as a duelist to replace a Reyna or even a Phoenix or Raze on a lineup in a duelist role.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much that Yoru is like, he needs tweaks for sure, but I think as long as his abilities are less impactful than those 3 other duelists, then you're just not going to see him in competitive play. It doesn't really matter how much you tweak him, unless you make him just ungodly OP, which is still going to be hard, just because Raze, Phoenix, and Reyna are all super strong.
Am I the only one who's happy that Yoru didn't become like a big thing and that it wasn't instantly in every single lineup? I was actually kind of ecstatic to see when they announced another duelist as like, this is not what we need right now, and that people are still running the classic comps. Is this a character that you guys are excited to see in gameplay? Do you want to see more of Yoru in the future, or do you like kind of the same old tried and true 3 or 4 duelists?
I think Yoru's, we ran Yoru on almost every map. And I said this in an interview recently. We ran him on every single map for like 2 or 3 weeks, and we had a lot of success with him. We put Sabrosa on him on a lot of maps, and he could make effective plays. It just overcomplicated things. I might as well just put him on Reyna and have him do the same exact stuff with less complex abilities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's going to be, they added another duelist, and it's obviously, we already have kind of an oversaturation of duelists. Maybe it'll be the case that as more agents get added in, we have that controller teased. Maybe there's going to be more agents that will synergize better. So I'm curious how they see that, whether they're going to do some of those like hard changes where they will try to force people to use Yoru by just making some stuff incredibly OP. But with that said, the other two changes, just a small change to Brim and Phoenix. I don't think these were. I mean, are these a big deal? We have for the Brimstone Incendiary, the audio of the Incendiary's lingering fire zone will be easier to hear when other actions and sounds occur nearby. Was this an issue, you feel like?
Not for us.
Yeah, I didn't really see this as like a glaring issue, and the same kind of thing for Hot Hands for Phoenix as well. So with that said,
seems
then
like a lower level problem.
I can't tell I'm burning.
Yeah. I think it's like low level ranked. Like there's a molly inside a smoke or inside omen smoke or brim smoke. You don't realize it's there, and you walk into it.
Right.
There's so much going on. I don't know. I don't think it was ever an issue for us though.
yeah. Man, now I think about it, I've done that a lot. Man. So the weapon updates. So this is super interesting, right? So at first we had those teasers, the leaks of the changes to this, to the weapons, the price changes of the weapons, and we saw the frenzy go up to 500. We saw the stinger go up to 1100 from 1000. It's like, and I was just praying that wasn't the only thing, because obviously that doesn't really change really anything about the weapon, especially given how it's being used in professional play and the impact it's having. But when we also have the Marshal, which got buffed, and it was already, I feel like, very good. And maybe it was the case that the Marshal was going to become used a little bit more in some of these forced by shenanigans, as it does, I think, answer some situations. And I think in the hands of a professional player, the Marshal is really nuts. But they have increased the movement speed for the Marshal to 90% of unzoomed from 76. You're going to move a lot quicker when you're scoped in. And there's a zoom magnification as well. Are we going to see some kind of Marshal meta really being forced by this change coming through in the forced by scenarios?
I think it depends on how hard the stinger is getting hit, right? Like looking at these numbers, it's interesting. It could be enough of a nerf that people buy the Marshal, but we won't really know until we know. And I think that's the thing with the Marshal is it's a great gun. It's just why would you spend 1100 for a Marshal when you could buy a stinger?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's going to be map dependent for sure. I think certain maps like Ascent that has like long mid lines, the Marshal is going to be beneficial to players like Wardell. I'm sure is happy about these changes. The Marshal is going to feel a lot more like a scout, and he loved the scout in CS:GO. So I think the Stinger changes and the Frenzy changes are both pretty obvious changes that needed to be made, and I'm glad that the Frenzy only got hit with the monetary change, because I don't think the gun is that overpowered. I think just the gun plus armor is overpowered on pistol rounds. So I like that change, and I'm interested to see if the Stinger change is enough to push people off of it. It kind of seems like it will be, so I'm just not sure. I got to see it in action.
Yeah, so quick note on that. You're now seeing the Frenzy going up to 500 credits. A lot of complaints that I saw was it's not necessarily the cost of the Frenzy that's the problem. It's the mobility with it and how accurate you can be on the run. Do we think, though, now that you mentioned Taylor, you can't get the Frenzy and armor in that first round? Will we see teams start to buy Frenzies for each other? Will we see some raid boss stacking happening here?
Yeah, I think so. I think the raid boss thing could definitely happen, which you would see in Counter-Strike sometimes. People would raid boss like P250s and CZs and stuff. But I think with the Frenzy, the biggest issue is that you could get the Frenzy and armor on all your players. And that's just like having 5 people run at you and be able to accurately shoot you. That's tough. But outside of that, I mean, you don't see the Frenzy dominate in gun rounds, really. It was only in the pistol round.
Right.
So I think this change makes the Ghost more viable again, which will definitely benefit our team. My team still loves the Ghost. But the raid boss idea is okay, because there's only going to be like one person being able to run you down in entry. And the rest of the team's still going to be vulnerable to those long lines. So you just got to change the way you play.
And considering sort of, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just to say I agree with that. The main threat of the Frenzy at the moment was just deathballing with 4 or 5 people into a site. I mean,
it made pistol rounds pretty boring.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll see a shift back towards actual utility and setups and pistol rounds instead of, okay, which site are we going to deathball into with all of our Frenzies today?
And it's going to be interesting too, just because like I feel like there's been so much variance that people have been really sort of abusing and discovering at a professional level. And I think this is something that tailored. I was talking with Mike, and he raised Mike's. Obviously, people know him from Multiple Minds and doing some coaching with G2 in the past. And he was mentioning that Sliggy Head was kind of theorizing that you guys are struggling a little bit more because in this sort of force buy meta, it's harder to get the operator on Wardell by round 4, or and that and just is so disruptive having the power behind the running gun from from the frenzy, the running gun from the stinger, and so on. So as we're looking at some of the stinger changes, are you feeling like you're gaining like a sense of relief that maybe there's more that you can do against these kinds of mental stinger buys?
I think the biggest advantage for us is that we're a team that relies heavily on making adjustments to how teams are playing. I think my guys are really good at recognizing what's happening and adjusting to that. And the fact that, either team won't get a full gun round until the 5th or 6th round because you're just buying back and forth means that it's even less time to adjust in a 13-round game. So I think that the fact that we're so improvisational with the way we play, it'll benefit us in that regard. I don't think it's necessarily that we didn't have an op because Wardell can rifle really well. I mean, you've seen him clutch with a rifle just as well as he can op. But it will be nice having the early game be a little calmer so we can take that time to read our opponent. We're not just getting, like Syyko said, deathballed every round. But you can see during the last few tournaments, we've been buying second round now instead of saving on that second round, which we've been doing for a while. And we win a lot of those rounds. So, we can jump into the meta. It's just like, I don't know. It's kind of boring playing that way.
Yeah, like Syyko, as a coach, someone that's trying to prepare your team with strategies and tactics and matches. Has it been frustrating feeling like you just have to like get through this force buy battle before the game kind of starts, and the more strategical game starts?
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating. But for us, I mean, we really concentrated on excelling at shutting down that second run stinger buy, because it's just so huge. If you can just shut that down, put them on eco for the next round, you get that extra round out of it. So, for us, it's just something that, like Taylor said, you just got to adapt to the meta and be malleable and willing to learn how to identify what the meta is and then shut it down so that we can play our game and force them onto our terms.
How soon before we know whether or not stingers are in the game moving forward, right? This patch notes just come out today. We've got the big Challengers 2 coming out, and with the stinger, for those who didn't read the notes, the big issue is recoil and fire rate changes, right? Your burst fire is still pretty good, but it seems that if you're spraying it, it's going to have massive recoil at the kick, some kick on it, and you're going to see it shooting a little bit slower. So I feel like without the stinger, we don't have this whole mess of that round 2, round 3 action. Is the stinger going to be in the game after Challengers 2 and moving into maybe even the first Masters event in March?
Challengers is going to be played on the old patch,
okay.
I'm sure. And I'm not sure about the following open qualifier. So it could be, a few weeks to a month before we really know how the meta is impacted by it. But I think Syyko and I will know in scrims before then what's happening. So,
the way I understand for the qualifiers, the open qualifiers are played on whatever the live patch is, and then the following challenger event is played on whatever patch the open qualifier was just played on. So Challenger 2 will be on this previous patch, but open quals for Challenger 3 will have the stinger changes. So we won't see probably much stinger action in the next couple days leading up to Challenger 2 because we'll be scrimming on the old patch. But I'm sure all the ranked kids will be force buying round 2. You can leave it up to them. Pretty reliable on that. So I'm sure we'll see on Twitter how people are feeling about the stinger, and then next week we'll get to test it out in scrims.
I was going to say, we're literally 7 days away from that third open qualifier, so it's coming up on us real quick.
Yeah, not only that, but a lot of these teams can't practice. Like we can't practice right now because we have a player in Texas. A lot of the teams have players in Texas. I have to cancel on Syyko later today because James still doesn't have power. We were supposed to scrim today, and we were going to play Envy and Anbox, and can't play them either. So we got 7 days going into a tournament. We can't practice on a new patch. It's rough.
Feels for Tailored, man.
Yikes. Yeah, that's a rough one. Well, I mean, it's been really interesting seeing some of these developments. As we're talking about them, I wanted to kind of raise the. I mean, this is the point I wanted to raise a bit later, but as we're kind of there, we have this issue in this game of variance more so than in a game like Counter-Strike, because especially right now where you have this issue whereby the force blows are really good, so strategic really strategic, more tactical teams, they have to fight a little bit harder to get past that hump and deal with that first to then really play the strategical game a little bit more. And on top of that, as you said, Taylor, you're working with less rounds overall than you are with Counter-Strike. Do you guys feel that variance a lot when you're playing, and when you're kind of devising strategies and trying to innovate, or is it actually starting to feel, now you've had more experience coaching in this game, that, as you said, like adaptability is a huge element, and having a team and players that are able to do that is how you actually deal with the variance? Like how do you guys think about it in this game? Are you frustrated by it? How does it hit for you?
I think so. A really good example was our Icebox match against Gen G. We had no idea how they were going to play because I didn't have any VODs to watch. We'd only scrimmed them like once or twice, and the way they played in the match was way different than how we scrimmed them on Icebox. So we went into that. We lost pistol on our CT side, or on our defensive side, and then we forced back and won that round. And then they started hitting us with these mid splits that we just weren't used to. And I think we adjusted accordingly. We adjusted within like a round or two. We got our money back. But by the time you do that, the best we could hope for was a 7-5, us getting 5 rounds. And then we screwed up one clutch situation that gave us an 8-4. So if we did everything right, adjusted well, we're still ending on an 8-4 half. And if we don't win that next pistol, our T side is screwed. And T side is you need your momentum early on that map. So sometimes it feels like if you do everything right, you're still going to lose, and you can see it coming from like a mile away. It really is hard. So yeah, I think the MR12 or MR13, whatever it is, really affects some teams, especially us. And sometimes it's to our advantage, sometimes not. That's a good example of it not being to our advantage for sure.
Yeah, it's a very momentum-based game right now. You can get the early swing in economy, get those pistol rounds, shut down the, win your bonus, and put them on the back foot. You have a lot of momentum to where, by the time, like you said, you get to the strategic part of the game, you have a huge advantage. So even if they may have the one up on you strategically, if you have, a 4-0, 5-0 lead up on them, it's really hard to claw your way back into that game. And you feel that pressure. I know these guys feel the pressure of going down those rounds. So I too would like to see more rounds on each half. I think that would make the back and forth more interesting, give teams more time to kind of identify and strategize against each other mid-game instead of it being more of a pre-round prep like Taylor alluded to.
I don't think it's going to happen, boys. I'm just saying now, prepare yourself for eternal frustration on that note, because there's no way Riot's going to be like, you know what, actually, we should make it closer to Counter-Strike. I think we're going to see Valorant staying at the numbers they're currently at, maybe just figuring out. I don't even think they'll make changes to overtime anymore moving forward. I think what we have as a format is going to be what we're playing for the next 2 years. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think it's an entertaining format. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely pros to it for sure. The fact that the games are shorter feels nice. A BO3 doesn't suck the soul out of you,
right?
Like it did in Counter-Strike. You have these 3.5-hour long matches. But yeah, I think small changes like making pistols less impactful will help for sure. because as it stood with the Frenzy Stinger meta, that's like 6 rounds you could get out of a 13-round game, which is extreme.
It's pretty
So,
nutty.
yeah, making pistols less impactful, making it so people want to save that second round instead of force by stingers. I think that stuff will help, because before that meta, it wasn't that big of a complaint for me, the how many rounds you got. So maybe we'll go back to how it was a few months ago.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because it felt like in this game you could get more buys in general that were actually you could work with, whereas now it's kind of in this situation where it's actually like people are able to, or incentivized to basically buy every round. There's something that you can do that can be very difficult to deal with. And it is an interesting balanced discussion. As you say, there are loads of pros in terms of like storylines. It feels like when a game is won or lost, if you're there on the analyst desk afterwards, you can be like, well, this is how this team got ahead. This is where this other team had to try to make those adjustments, and they either succeeded or not. And it only goes so far. But in CS, I remember there's so many games where I'm like trying to keep track of it, and then it gets to a point where there's so many adjustments that start to happen that it becomes impossible to really talk about how many important things are actually happening in the match. So telling the story becomes more difficult. So there's definitely a lot of pros to it, as you say, but you can't kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can't have like a game that's very high variance. But you can't increase the variance by reducing the amount of rounds. Then also increase the variance by having all of the kind of run and gun and just reducing the mechanical skill ceiling, which also, of course, increases variance as well. And then on top of that, having like this ability to just buy every single round. So it's going to be interesting to see how Riot kind of balance the scales on this one to kind of create the best experience for the pros and the spectators. It's definitely, I don't envy them because it's going to be hard to figure it out, but I do like some of the risks they've taken so far.
Yeah, I have full faith in Riot. I think the changes they've made so far have been they're clearly listening to the community to an extent, and they're clearly maintaining, their own focus and their own storyline in the game. So I have full faith that they'll end up with an amazing game. It's an amazing game already. So
yeah, and it seems like
absolutely. And I've been one to like kind of put up my nose at people who are like, oh, the game should be more like CS in this aspect or that aspect. And,
no, not at all.
Poking fun at those guys, right? But I think Riot, like Taylor said, is doing a great job, and I think they're going to end up taking this a great place. I think it's already at a great place. I think from a spectator point of view, it's amazing to watch. Like the back and forth, especially in NA, anybody can beat anybody right now, and every game is exciting. Every game can go to overtime and go deep. So I'm really enjoying the game so far.
Dan, can we hit that note right now? Because I love that comment. Everyone can beat everyone in NA right now. Some people are complaining about it. You see some of the pros who are losing coming off a match saying the game should be more difficult, that aiming should be tougher, that you shouldn't be able to move as much. I feel like a lot of people are just putting a ton of time into this game, and we are seeing a number of variable results coming in and out of these tournaments. But Taylor, as a guy who's been on one of the top teams since the very beginning, since the beta here with TSM, what is the state of the game right now? How many teams are in that top tier or top 2 tiers where they could be competing for a spot at a challenger's position, or maybe even go the distance to a Masters?
Well, I think the thing in Valorant is always going to be about consistency. So I think there's teams that have consistently been at the top, like us and Sentinels. Were clearly the 2 top teams over the summer and at the beginning of beta and stuff. And then you have challenger teams like XSET, Immortals, LG. They all come and they show that they can fight just as hard as we can fight. But I think the biggest thing is going to be consistency. I mean, we've had lulls in our performances. Like before First Strike, we had a lull where we were not playing well in scrims. We had a lot of reworking to do. We're obviously in a bit of a lull right now in these open qualifiers, but we came in second in First Strike, which everyone says was a fluke. We should have won First Strike, but it's just about consistency, and it's the same. It was the same in Counter-Strike. You know, the best players are always the most consistent players. Everyone can hit the same shots as everyone else. It's how often you can do it. So it's nice to see teams like XSET performing well over and over again as they've improved. So I hope to see them continue to improve and continue to win. But I think consistency is the main goal.
Syyko, who from outside of that old school crew do you think is now breaking into the top tiers at this point? Clearly, your team is going to be playing in challengers too. We see teams like Luminosity making it to a finals recently. What are your expectations for kind of the next wave of teams that'll be challenging towards the top?
I think Luminosity and Immortals are two teams that are on an exceptional hot streak right now, obviously. But I think that they're both similar in that they have a lot of individual skills stacked onto a roster. It's a lot of individual talent, and Luminosity in particular like to, force you into these 50-50 fights and try and beat you through, their aim and like put you in a position where they're going to out aim you. I think that those guys, if they can maintain that level of consistency and add some strategy on top of what they have, are going to be really dangerous moving forward. I think Chemicals is a really good pickup for Immortals. I coached him on a tier 2 team Genesis with Profi and Nosy and a couple of guys. He was always exceptional, but he was a Cypher main back then. So it's interesting to see him transitioning into the Jet and kind of taking on all these tier 1 players.
Yeah, it seems like things are definitely starting to shift, or at least if that shift is being felt, like, as you say, with Immortals finding so much success, and with, for example, you guys finding so much success. What do you think it is for XSET? What for you guys has really been clicking? Do you think that's really allowed you to kind of jump up to have so much success of late, and to continue that trajectory?
And as you answer this, Syyko, I know some people just kind of fell asleep during Christmas and they're just now waking up to Valorant again. Could you walk us through your roster and tell us a little bit about this team for anyone who missed what you've accomplished so far this year?
Sure. So Thwifo, Xander hit me up, said, hey, look, we got this team, Pretty Boys. We got an org lined up. But we've hit this like plateau, and we've been struggling to push through this plateau. And at the time, I think they were like 35th on VLR, and they were kind of cycling through players and trying to find the right fit and stuff. So I came in, and we immediately needed to fill the smoker spot. So we had a couple of people in mind, but I ended up going with We Did, who turned out to be a really good fit. From there, we had some good success in tournaments for a little bit. Saw an opportunity to strengthen the roster a bit and picked up BCJ, and just had really good success. I think the key, I don't know if there really is a key to success. I don't know if there's like one thing that any teams can do to like become better, but I think for us, it was really just how hard we've been working and how hard everybody wanted it. Everybody on the team, for the most part, outside of maybe Pure R, came from CS, and Pure R, was MDL. He's not like an XCS pro or anything like that.
Right.
So everybody really wants to prove themselves at the top level and show that, they can be these top players in a game like this. So we put in a lot of time. We scrim a lot throughout the week. We put in a lot of VOD review. And we focus a lot on team play and strategy, as opposed to kind of like feeding the individual plays. I know some teams kind of like to lean towards that side, but, we take more of a strategic approach, make sure everybody's tradable, stuff like that.
Yeah, with that said, like when you're saying doing the work and putting the work into VOD reviews and so on, is this an entire team activity, or is it restricted more to like, yourself and maybe the IGL and maybe one other, or, how is that kind of fitting for the whole team?
I think that's another interesting thing about this team is that we don't really have like like an FNS or anything like that, who's like the hard IGL that dictates every round from start to finish and micromanages people. We have caller on CT side, and then we have another caller on T side for pre-round, and then kind of anybody can speak up mid-round and make a call when they see it. It's been a hard system to kind of iron out because you end up stepping on each other's toes, so you have to lay out a lot of protocols on who's calling when, but it's been working well so far.
That's cool.
Gotcha.
Are you the only team who has a caller for each side?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how most teams are doing it.
I think there's other teams
There's a
that
few more.
have similar patterns. I mean, we have we have Hazed call a lot of CT rounds just because he's often like our sentinel, and moving the sentinel around is like the most complex character setup pre-round. So
Okay.
knowing what he's doing pre-round is important. It's a lot different than Counter-Strike. So, but anyone can call anything on our team. If they have a call, then they'll make it. I mean, Sabrosa still makes a lot of calls. Wardell will make calls where he wants to go with the operator a lot of rounds. So I think that just feeds into that improv style that I talk about a lot. I think a lot of the top teams are working with a system like that.
Okay, so I've got a question for both you, Taylor, and Syyko. So firstly, Syyko, tell me what qualities or what comes to mind when you're thinking about TSM and what TSM does particularly well that stands out to you. And then likewise, Taylor, I'm going to ask you the same question, but for XSET, what does XSET do that you think is pretty sick?
This feels like
The circle's coming together, boys.
In middle school.
We're gonna pump each other up. Let's go.
And they put us in the same room. They say, "All right, now say something nice about each other before you walk out of this room." But no, at TSM, I mean, Taylor hit it on the head. They were, them and Sentinels. They've been the big boys for a very long time. It's been very hard to find a team that's as consistent as them. A lot of teams will pop up and win some of these little tier 1 tournaments here and there. But when it comes to first strike and stuff like that, they've really hammered it out. So I think for TSM, it really is consistency just across the board, everybody individually on that roster. There's not really weaknesses. Some teams we look at and we're like, okay, this is the weak link. We're going to hit where he's at. TSM doesn't really have that. Everybody on that team is very solid. And they're very structured, and they all kind of know what they're doing.
Aw.
Great
All right,
job, coach.
Taylor, let's go.
Well, XSET, I mean, their comps are like out of this world sometimes. They made Viper work. Like I've always said, Viper's a strong character, and on the right team, she would be excellent. And I think we did, and Syyko have shown that that's true. And I'm glad someone's finally like showing that that's a capability that you can make any comp work. I think how quickly they arrange their retakes is something that sounds small, but it absolutely fucked us on split. And our comms were wildly bad on that split half that they had a big comeback on. So yeah, I think their comps and their chemistry that they've developed is really strong. And I'm guessing their communication is strong too, because of how quickly they can set up these retakes and stuff.
Do you agree with that, Syyko, or is it just a coincidence here?
Yeah, he's pretty sharp. He's got a good analysis there. I think comms is definitely a strong point for us and retakes as well. The comp wise, I think it's kind of easier, right? Because we have a weeded who knows how to play Viper really well, so it's easier to kind of make that work. You're not really trying to teach someone how to play Viper; they already know how to play it. So we get to kind of pull that out, and then on some maps we play Raze, where others would usually play Arena or Phoenix. So definitely like to mix it up and give people different looks that are difficult.
I really like that question, Dan. I feel the positivity in the room. Can we take a moment to plug the fact that you guys can ask your questions to our experts today? We have Taylor and we have Syyko joining the show, TSM, as well as XSET coaches. If you have a question for the coaches about their players, about the meta, any of that, hit us up on Twitter right now using the hashtag Immortal Minds. And with that said, I have a question for Weeded. We just hyped up your Viper, man. We all enjoyed watching your Viper throughout these qualifiers, but who else is in the top tier of Vipers globally? Who else do you look to for inspiration? Because I feel like the number of pro Vipers are still, you can count them on two hands, maybe even one hand these days, DDK.
Yeah, and I mean, if we look at Ambox, for example, Poach got cut, he was their Viper and Sober. So yeah, it definitely seems like it's hard. It's hard to make it work and find the right team to make it work with. And I think that's got to be a really discouraging element. I think one of the things that makes Weeded special. I actually remember a long time ago, Mike's and I were, we did a lot of these demo reviews. We looked at, I think we saw more than one game where we were watching on Mamba Mode Gaming. We did on the Viper, and we started to kind of see what he was trying to do. And it was really cool because there weren't a lot of people that were really trying to make that work. And what's even more interesting in that sense is that one of the other things that's interesting about We Did, and I think a discussion point as well, is that he's somebody that hasn't had previous professional level experience. This is the first game he's coming into. He's like a first generation Valorant competitor, effectively, and that's really interesting because especially given what we were thinking going into this game, you think that the CS players would have a lot of advantages. And in CS, it took quite a long time for the CS:GO, the first generation CS:GO players to start. I think I would say maybe it took like a few years for them to really start coming up and having success. But in Valorant, it seems like we're seeing more of this. So that's, I think, another interesting discussion point about this game and what it takes to be good at this game. And we was making Viper work, lots of really cool setups. And he just kept trying, man. And so it's in that sense, actually, Syyko, when you had We Did on the team and you're trying to work in stuff with Viper, what was that kind of process like? Was that an easy process to kind of fit it in, or did it take some crowbar work?
Viper's interesting. You really have to change how you play when you have Viper, because once that wall goes up, you can't move it. So you really have to have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish. If you're going to need the wall later on, which choke point is she holding it down on defense, stuff like that. It was definitely difficult getting everybody up to speed on that. I think we're still, like, even yesterday, we're just like, oh, we have to be doing this better to make Viper work better. And there's always this constant talk about, hey, maybe we just won't play Viper. And I'm like, no, we're playing Viper, we just playing Viper. But you have to commit to it. You really have to want to make Viper work to make her work, because she is in an interesting spot where she's specific. You have to have a very specific idea of how to use her. So if your Viper is not the IGL, then your IGL has to macromanage what your Viper's doing pre-round to make sure that he has what he needs to accomplish in the round on T side.
Yeah. What were the stumbling blocks for you, Taylor? Again, I know that because I think we got hazed on, I think, before you on Immortal Minds.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Hazed as well was also like a really big fan of trying to figure out how to incorporate Viper. So in terms of that for you guys, where has it been difficult, and what do you think it is about XSET's success with it that's different to something that you've been able to kind of come up with so far?
Well, we ran Viper for a little while on Split. I don't know how many official matches we had her in, but we ran her for maybe a month on Split, and she was strong. It wasn't any different than us running a Cypher or an Omen plus another Initiator or Duelist. But it's just like it doesn't benefit how adaptable we try to maintain our T sides. So like Syyko said, you have to have an idea of what you want to do, because once her utility goes up, you're not getting it back. And that does not fit the TSM play style. We have a lot of like on the fly calls, quick adjustments. And then something that Syyko's team has done so well is like on their retakes, they use their wall to cut off our crossfires, which is super annoying, especially on a map like Split. But a lot of that's just coming down to We Did placing stuff. I don't know how much of that is set or how much is on the fly, but it's definitely a new play style. And I think a lot of agents can get you a foot in the door when it comes to retaking or post plants, that if you don't adjust too quickly, you're going to lose the match for sure. So I'm sure if we played XSET again, we might have an easier time. It depends on like how much of their stuff we've seen before, which is why I'm excited for a potential demo system in this game, and getting more VODs available. I'm very excited to be able to do more prep work going into a match for sure.
Do we have any idea of the timeline of that? Have they given any
I don't know
insight
anything
to the pros? Okay.
Nope. But yeah, Viper, like I said, anyone can make her work. It's just about how much of a headache you want to endure trying to make it work. So we just try and make our comps less complicated so the guys can focus on that individual decision making and staying adaptable.
Well, I mean, that has been working for you guys, so it doesn't really make sense that you would change it. So that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I wanted to touch on as well is that this game is taking place online still. I really kind of hope very much, like everybody else, that we might see some offline events this year. That would be amazing if that could be a reality. We'll see, I suppose. But for now, we have to continue with the woes and the frustrations of playing online. And obviously, playing in North America online historically and to this day is much more difficult than in Europe. Where in Europe, it's a lot easier to get favorable pings for both teams. So, the net code becomes a discussion. And, I've heard a lot of people saying that the current net code is favoring, more of an aggressive playstyle, that deathball kind of playstyle where you are wide swinging a lot of the time. Is this something that you guys are frustrated with? Have you learned to live with it? What would you want to see changed about it?
Are you fans of swingers?
Yeah. I think our team would benefit from playing on LAN for sure. We have a lot of experienced players who have lived on LAN for a long time. And I'm not going to pretend to know anything about netcode, about how the internet works. But in this game, it feels like ping differential is a way bigger deal than in any other FPS I've played. And I'm not sure why. I don't know why. But I'm sure it's something that Riot is trying to address. It's pretty clear that people are complaining about it. So I trust that they're looking into it, trying to fix it as best they can. But it's just, it's the state of the world right now. Everything is online. So it's just something that we've dealt with. We don't really internally complain about it much. We just hope that those LAN events can come sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to LAN. I don't know exactly how it'll affect us, but obviously I hope it's for the better, and I think we all assume it will be. We don't complain too much about wide swinging online. I think most of us get pretty decent ping and performance, but there are times where it's like frustrating for the guys for sure, because sometimes it feels like, oh, maybe if I was on LAN, I wouldn't have gotten killed there. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but it's hard. It's the speculation, it's the doubt, right? Is my network performance interrupting competitive integrity that otherwise we wouldn't have to worry about if it weren't for this whole COVID mess, because a lot of these events would probably be on LAN. So we're all looking forward for this like being over and us being on LAN. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I do wonder on LAN how much it's going to kind of fundamentally change some of the duels that people are used to taking online, and suddenly they'll start getting blown up and just
Rein 'em
it'll be a
back
bit of a
in.
confusing. Yeah, it's going to be kind of a little random to begin with, isn't it? It's going to be scary for people to play on LAN. I wanted to ask a question to Syyko about coaching again, because you said that you took to coaching like a duck to water. It's like you got into it and you realized that this is what I'm supposed to do. In terms of coaching, it's been really interesting in esports because there's no standardized approach to it. It can look completely different on every single team, and what a coach brings to a team can be completely different. And so, like, if you were to describe the areas of coaching, for you that you excel at, or that you're kind of operating from within your team, is it more strategical and tactical? Is it prep? Are you helping to manage interpersonal relationships with your players? Are you kind of a soft performance coach as well as that strategical analyst? There's so many different hats you can wear, right? So what kind of best describes you? What do you like the most?
I think that's a really solid. That's something I've noticed since I started coaching, is that every team I've been on has needed something else. I first came into coaching at the strategic and the analytical side of it, but as I started coaching and have had different teams, I've realized that leadership and interpersonal development has been a strength of mine as well. On XSET especially, I've kind of been more of like a team dad, kind of just led the team as far as that goes, as well as guided strategically and kind of helped them come up with things. But yeah, like you said, it just depends on the team, and I just try and fill the needs of whatever team I'm on. And I think XSET has really hit a strong mesh point that lines up with what I'm truly good at, along with what they need from me.
Who is your firstborn who follows the rules, and who is the unruly child on XSET?
Firstborn that follows the rules is definitely Aaron. He's the oldest. He's closest to my age, so it's really easy to kind of one-on-one with him and be like, hey, like this is what's up, and he just gets it right. Some of the other guys, they're younger, so I can get touch and go with certain things. The unruly child, man,
Is it we did?
that's a hard one. I got a couple. I want to say we did.
I got a couple. They're
But
triplets.
BCJ can be it as well. So I think between the two of them, those are, like the twins that like to get into the crayons.
Taylor, what about you? Who's the firstborn on the TSM side of things, and who's in timeout?
I got a few guys that are often in timeout. Obviously, Wardell has a ton of energy, and that can lead to some
Nose in the corner time.
hyperactive scrim moments, I guess I'll say. But we always have fun during scrim, so there's a lot of moments where all of us are acting up, but all the guys take it seriously. They're all competitors. I think Cutler is definitely the most calm and down-to-earth one. He will never overreact about anything, which is why I have him in the IGL role, and he fits the characters that fit in IGL really well. I think he's excelled on Sova more than any other character he played, maybe next to Cypher. So I would say that Cutler has like the most calm sensibility about him. He's the easiest to work with for sure. But all the guys, they all have excellent input at times, and it's hard to pick one bratty child.
Proud dad right there.
Nice. Well, I think this is like one of those very difficult things when building a team. I imagine is just like it's so easy, especially if you don't know the game very well, to think, oh, I want to pick the guy that does really well on this team and this guy that does really well on that role from that other team. And it's so much about the chemistry, and it's so much about how everybody fits together, and it's so much less about one individual. It's about having a team that is more than the sum of its parts. So it's really interesting to see how teams get there, because it seems like it can be such an accidental process as well. So yeah, it's really interesting hearing some of those insights. Taylor, in terms of coaching, how is that? What's the evolution been like for you? Because again, like it feels like again you can really wear as many hats as you want to in the role. Has there been any areas of it that you felt like you've had to put a lot more work into than others that come less naturally, that you feel like you needed to do for the team's sake, or how has it been?
Yeah, I think like I said, the interpersonal relationship building has been something pretty new for me. I've been a manager on a team before, and I've been an analyst on a team before. So I came into this game. I was never like a numbers guy. I never really believed that looking at the right numbers could win you a game. I always thought it was about like the individual playmaking and the chemistry and stuff. But I never had to mitigate and mediate between people before, and I'm having to do that on this team. Even though my guys have great chemistry, it's like it's 5 high testosterone people playing a very competitive game. Shit gets heated sometimes. So I think managing that and making sure my guys are being the best versions of themselves as often as they can be, I think that's been a new challenge for me for sure.
Are you guys kind of worried in any sense of how Riot may perceive and deal with coaches going into the future? Like, for example, it doesn't seem like there's a huge priority for coaches. You guys don't even have a slot in the server, like.
One year later.
And obviously with Valve, I would hope that they don't take the same approach Valve has done, where it feels like a very bad relationship with coaches, and they don't really want the coaches, it almost feels like, to be involved, and there's been so much drama around that. I'm hoping that the story is different with Riot, and that it's seen much more of an integral part to a team, and is treated with that respect, with how things are presented, and with the tools you guys are getting to, like coaching slots, like the replays and everything else, and so on. What do you feel like in terms of the kind of future prospects for this, being a coach in a Riot game? Do you feel better than if you were playing a Valve game?
I think that I think the difference is that with Riot, I think a lot of the coaches feel like they're just waiting in line. We're just waiting for our turn because they have so much other stuff going on, and that we can patiently wait our turn to get the stuff that we need to help a team. They have a lot of other things to focus on. I mean, they're still churning out maps like crazy. They're doing a lot of weapon balance changes. They're still releasing agents on every 3 months or whatever. That's a ton of work for this team to do. So I can understand why coaches have a lower priority. But with Valve, I was not in line. I was outside the building on the street, and the door was locked, and they were making fun of me from inside the windows. So yeah, I trust that Riot will. I mean, I've had meetings with Riot. I can't name a single Valve employee outside of Gaben, and I'm friendly with Riot devs. I'm very close with some of them, so I think just the fact that they're willing to talk to coaches and they understand how esports works is makes me very hopeful for the future. So I'm not worried about it.
Can I ask some difficult coach questions? And you guys are free to dodge any of these. But I got to start here with what's going on with T1. First of all, what do we think of Fraud leaving this squad? Was this on his own terms? Was the whole team just falling apart at that point? And David Dennis, former TSM member, is now lining up as the head coach of T1. Tailored, any insight you can provide on this situation?
Well, I didn't know until he got announced that. So David was working with the league team primarily, and we had maybe 4 or 5 meetings with him, and he sat in on some scrims just to give us some input when he was in some downtime on the league team. And he gave us good input. I guess TSM felt that he wasn't giving good enough input, so they let him explore other options. But yeah, he was primarily a league, what do they call it? Whatever type of coach,
performance
like
coach, I think was the official title.
I think it's a little strange to pick him up as a head coach for a team, just because usually a head coach has to provide some level of strategy input.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can make it work, they might be able to make it work. That team is full of people with a lot of tournament experience and leadership experience, so they just might not need that analytical style coach for that team. Like DDK said, a coach can wear many hats. So I don't know. They can make it work. I'm not really sure. But David's a nice guy, and I wish him the best for sure. As far as Fraud leaving, I don't know if it was mutual or the team wanted to let him go. I think the fact that Brax and AZK also have both stepped down or been cut means that there was some turmoil in the team, some disagreement that couldn't be fixed. So my guess is that it was a mutual understanding.
Syyko, do you think T1 is going to be built stronger now, adding automatic to the lineup? You're losing AZK and Brax, but you're kind of starting fresh with some more firepower here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because I feel like Brax was really finding his stride, whereas towards the beginning of the game, he was definitely impressive aim-wise, but I felt in a team setting on a server, he was underwhelming. But when they started shifting his roles around and he started kind of picking it up these last few months, I thought he was really impressive. So to see him and Fraud and AZK all leave is really interesting. David seems like a nice guy. I don't really know him from before Valorant, but from booking scrims with him the last few weeks, he seems like a cool dude. I definitely can see a difference, already. Like I can't say any specifics, but just in the server with them, it's already a different team. They execute differently, they run different comps. It's been interesting seeing how the coach and player changes have completely reshaped what that team is, and I think we'll see a much different T1 moving forward. I think the automatic change panning out will depend on how fast he can develop as a Valorant player.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously has really solid mechanics, but just translating that to add in Valorant specific knowledge over the next month or two, it'll be interesting to see what his potential is.
And then taking a look at some of the other teams real quickly here, guys. IGL changes both for Anbox and Renegade. Strongleg stepping in as the IGL for Renegades, I'm told. And then Anbox benching Poach. They're looking at the IGL from Moon Raccoons, I heard in their latest qualifiers. So Taylor, do you have any insight on some of these other teams that are making swaps?
I mean, Renegades always had a really strong chemistry. I was a little surprised to see them make the change that they did. I don't know much about Strong Legs outside of his stream because we haven't really played each other much, just because of the tournament level difference. But he seems like a competitor who has a drive. So if he can bring some level of leadership to the team, that could help them a lot. And then Ambox, I think it was pretty clear they needed a leadership change. I don't know anything about Poach, but I think they definitely need some more structure because right now they're relying really heavily on Jacob and Brad, on Android and Ye,
Right,
to get them through rounds.
Yeah, that was definitely my sense as well. It's a difficult one. I think when Ambox first sort of broke out and had that a great tournament, the first thing I said to people was, "This is exciting and it's cool." But at the same time, we have to hold our horses here because there's we see this even in CS, a game which has less variance ultimately. Where a team can have a really strong run in a tournament. I think Furia would be a great example when they first came onto the scene. They beat Astralis, and and no one knows how to deal with their style. But after one event, people start to know what's going on. They'll start to study you, and it's the question as to whether you have the adaptation, you have the fundamental prowess to actually still be a strong team when other teams know what they're up against. And it seemed like that was kind of the case with Ambox as well. That they hit a really good stride in that one event, and then it's on them to like replicate that, and they were sort of unable to do so. So I wonder if they're sort of just if there is a bit of a scramble, it's just trying to figure out what do we change, and it's so hard to know also within a team what's going on in terms of the chemistry. Like you guys were saying, like if the interpersonal stuff isn't managed well, there can be resentment coming into places where it doesn't necessarily need to be, and that can cause people maybe get one person getting siloed away from the others, and and be scapegoated. So there's who knows it's really hard to predict, but I hope they're able to figure it out though. I think they've got a lot of really good players. I think, as you said, like Android and Ye are really amazing in terms of their mechanical ability, but they have to become Valorant players as well. So I'm curious. I'm very curious at that box. You guys think they were overhyped as well?
I want to get Syyko's take because you were kind of in that same tier this whole way.
Yeah, we kind of we were coming up around the same time Ambox was developing their team as well. When we first would scrim them, they were scary, man. Like they'd run Viper on bind, and they'd hit A site and they'd cut our CT setups in half, and we were like, what the fuck is going on? Like how do we counter this? And for a really long time they were scary, right? And we talked about Poach getting cut earlier and how that affects like Viper being seen, but I think they were already like shying away from that because people started to figure out how to play against it. It was one of those things that it was weird at first because nobody really had any protocols, but once you start scrimming against the Viper, you start developing the protocols against the Viper. So I think on a map like Bind, it just wasn't working. I don't know as far as like, I can't really speak to their interpersonal workings. I don't really know why Poach was released. I do agree with what Taylor said that Ye and Android were kind of doing the heavy lifting frag-wise to kind of keep them afloat. They've definitely fallen off a little bit since a couple months ago. So it'll be interesting to see if Rebo is, who they decide permanently going forward, or if they're going to keep trying out people, or what that'll look like. But it's interesting to see Rebo IGL that team. He's more of a hard IGL. I'm gonna do like move the chess pieces around and let you frag kind of thing, which is interesting. We haven't really seen that much in this game. Usually, so far, everybody on the team is more of a hard fragger, and then somebody just kind of steps on and calls.
Yeah, and I actually want to quickly go back to the T1 thing because I actually want to make a bold prediction with T1 that they'll find a top four footing in the next like couple months, 2 to 3 months. I'm gonna make a bold prediction. I think part of the changes are because of how much Dazed wants to do things Dazed's way, which I think also kind of explains why they don't need a coach necessarily that's gonna maybe step on his toes. So he's gonna finally get the ability, presumably, to kind of work the team in the way that he wants. And I think the history with Brax and AZK. You know, previously they played with Daze and Steel and Skadoodle. You know, in that original iBuyPower lineup, that lineup was really good at that point in time. But at the same time, that lineup exploded before I think some of the problems within the team were going to come to a natural head, which I think they were headed that way. Because I think the chemistry of that team, from the outside at least, didn't seem like it was going to last a very long time. So I think maybe, you know, I have the sense that maybe that's kind of what we were beginning to see. And Automatic is, I think, one of the most versatile players and someone who's won a major in CS.
Major champion, the NA major champ, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a boss man, and he's hungry. Since the Boston Major, he's been looking to win a title, and I feel like he's been pipped at the post so many times in terms of getting a team that's actually going to stick together. So, I guess I'm kind of hoping for him and hoping for Days that they actually are able to return to some prominence with this.
Well, I need to put some stakes on this, Dan. I like the call that they're going to be in a semifinal. But what's the time frame? Like, how much wiggle room do we have to give you? Because we got the Masters coming up here in March, and then we've got a little bit of a layover. Are we talking top tier tournament? What is the level that they'll reach in that semifinal? It's not a Pittsburgh Knights like weekend event, right?
I mean, I think they need at least 3 months. Automatic is really fresh to the game. You know, they haven't had Spider for a very long time, and they've obviously made a lot of changes here. But I think like a minimum of 3 months to start to see them in a great shape. But you know, we'll see. Part of it is because I'm believing in Days and also Automatic. So maybe my faith is misplaced. I guess we'll see.
I feel like you've watched them enough that it's probably coming from a good place. What do you guys think of that prediction? Let's start with you, Syyko. Do you like Dan's pick? Next 3 months, we will see a semifinals appearance from T1.
I'm maybe a little bit more skeptical. I think that 3 months is definitely a good time for him to see the potential of this roster with these new changes, the new coach, the new players. But whether or not they're gonna, hit top 4 in the next, Riot event in 3 months, I don't know. There's a lot of competition right now. Our team was talking about it the other day. I think there's 25 or 26 salaried Valorant teams in North America. That's a lot of pressure for a lot of teams whose jobs are on the line to do well. So everybody wants it at the top level. Everybody wants that semifinal spot to show to their org, hey, we're worth you, continuing to pay us. So I think T1 has the potential on paper with all these players, but whether they're able to convert it into a top 4 placing in a Riot event in 3 months, time will tell for sure.
LG and Immortals just did it there in the first Challengers event there. What do you think could happen here, Taylor?
Yeah, T1 obviously has potential. Adding Tim, I think Automatic is like one of the smartest Counter-Strike players to ever step foot out of NA. So I'm really excited to watch him learn the game and watch it click like, okay, this is how you play the game, and then watch him run with it. So I think if him and Daze can form a partnership instead of butt heads, which David could provide a route to that partnership.
Okay.
David Dennis, then that team could be very strong. So I think Dan might be on the money with it, but we'll see. When we scrimmed them right after they picked up Automatic, it was like scrimming the old T1. It was like very late site hits, and it was very easy for us to shut down. Syyko's probably scrimmed them more recently than I have. So I think, maybe we could be seeing those changes already with the way he was talking about them.
Can we finish the T1 thought here, guys? Where do Brax and AZK go next? Is there a natural fit out there of a team of 3 or even a team that might remove a player to add this duo?
I think I already know where they're going, so I don't want to.
Not allowed to spoil that one.
I don't want to speculate.
Yeah, they're going to TSM.
Nice.
I have no idea.
Got to grow the beard.
It'll be interesting to see for sure. I think anybody who picks up Brax will definitely benefit. He has a very unique way of playing Jet, and I think that he can fit in on a support role and supplement already powerful fragging potential because he's a very smart kid and can pick up things really quickly. So it'll be interesting to see.
Dan, do you have a prediction of where this is going? I know you don't have the secret sauce that Taylor and I have.
Man, I have no idea. I really don't. I'd have no input on this one, I'm afraid. I have no idea.
Okay, moving on then. We had a few questions coming from Twitter. Can I start with the first one here? We can get back to a few of these in a moment. The first question is for Syyko. They want to know acoustic, bass, or electric guitar.
Oh, that's a tough one. If like someone was gifting me one, I would probably take the acoustic bass, right? Because it's worth like 10 times more, and it's a beautiful piece of art that I can put in my living room. I can't really play either of them. I'm not very good at either of them because I'm a drummer. I don't do string instruments.
Drummer, way off,
yeah.
Twitter person. Drummer. We got the musician part right. Well done.
I actually played guitar.
Do you?
Nice.
Yeah,
You need to get the
Just
coast
nice.
band going.
just not in front of anybody.
Not yet. You just wait. The post-COVID concert held by TSM. I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
So I just realized, Chris, that the time is getting away from us, and we should start the Ask Us Anything segment here. So we should really kick that off officially. It is time, guys. We'll be checking Twitter as well. The hashtag is, as Chris just mentioned, hashtag Immortal Minds if you've submitted any questions over there. But we'll also be checking the chat. So ask us anything. You can direct the questions to everybody or any individual. You can ask whatever you want.
Let's get real personal. Let's reveal some secrets.
Super personal.
I will answer any question.
What kind of milk do
Wow.
you take in your coffee?
Ooh, whole milk.
Oh, milk. Okay.
This is from fucking Weebtrez, who wants to know, TSM seems to change their IGL a lot. Do they plan to have a different mid-round color? It's been Cutler for a while, IIRC, but it's been Sub Rosa and Hazed even. Are they satisfied with the current calling? Hashtag Immortal Minds. This is from Seiya, aka Weebtrez.
That's a good question and a fair one. I think we started with Hayes because at first we didn't have an IGL. And the first time we lost the match, we were like, all right, it's time. Let's get a dedicated caller, just to have a voice to rally behind. And then when we made certain comp changes, I really liked the way Sabrosa was mid-rounding. So I asked him to take over the IGL role, at least temporarily, which became hard for him because he was playing as a duelist at the time. He was playing on Phoenix. So then I moved it over to Cutler because Cutler said he was finally willing to take over the role. He felt like he knew enough about the game finally to be able to perform well and call. And I mean, that was like 6-7 months ago now. So it's been a long time. And I'm happy with the way Cutler calls. Anyone can give mid-round input when they want. Cutler's calls are usually very on point with how he's reading the other team. I think our biggest issues come from not listening to the caller sometimes or not hearing what he's calling. So yeah, I'm satisfied with Cutler. We're not planning on changing that anytime soon.
Excellent.
Nice. Well, we have another Twitter question from Kelvin, which is, what is your least favorite map at the moment, and what would you do to improve it?
Let's start with Syyko here.
Icebox.
Don't say Icebox. God damn it.
Icebox. Look,
Icebox
I think it's a great map.
map.
I think it brings a lot of cool stuff. I like the verticality, especially. I really like the verticality. I like that they're experimenting with what a map can be for a game like this. However, I think the pathing into both the bomb sites, honestly, is a little. It could use some love. I think with some minor changes. I don't know what those changes are. I'm not a map designer. I couldn't pretend to like be smart enough to tell you exactly how to fix the map. All I can say is that playing the map, you have to really change how you play as a team, which I think is fine. But if it's totally breaking down how Valorant is played and adjusting it and shifting it, I think that we should kind of like realign it so that it could be played more like a Valorant map and not like its own entity altogether.
Yeah, I love Icebox. I don't know. I think it's a good map.
What's the worst then? Least favorite?
Least favorite is still probably Bind. I think Bind, the teleporters are a fun addition, and it's a cool idea, but I don't think it's enough to replace a mid on a map. And mid is what makes T sides and CT side defaults so dynamic and interesting to me. So I think that the inability to like split a bomb site effectively makes Bind pretty boring and one-dimensional as far as the layout goes. You know, there's still like some fun stuff that happens, but most of the A takes look the same. Most of the B takes look the same. The retakes look the same. That map would be the weakest out of the 5 for me.
Taylor, this next one comes from Evoke C137, who wants to know, why did you decide to use 2 controllers on bind? What's the thought process into going and selecting a comp like that?
I think the main reason we wanted to try it was to be able to like double execute on a site. So bind is interesting where you have to like execute on a site and then you can't just sit on the site because someone's going to retake on you and it becomes a nightmare. So being able to double execute or execute twice on a site makes it a lot easier to get onto the site to begin with. So if you execute up A and you throw your wall smokes between like tank and triple mid site, then the Omen's going to burn his flash in U-Haul. You can take time to find the cipher trips while those smokes are up. You can pinch bathroom players that are maintaining that bathroom control. And then once you've done all that, you can re-execute the back of the site with a spawn and a heaven smoke. So I think I don't think the double smokes is what gave us trouble on bind. I actually think our bind versus Gen G was pretty solid. They just had some really good retakes, and then we lost a few silly rounds that gave them the game. But I think the double controller, I don't know if I don't think we'll keep that going into the next event. But it's just one of those things. Like you can run any comp you want if there's some game plan for it, and that was our game plan, and it works pretty well.
I don't want to go too deep into this. And reminder, guys, it's best if you can use the hashtag Immortal Minds because then we can pull it up on the graphic. It looks real sexy and stuff. But Ethic in the chat wanted a quick follow-up. With that same logic that you just used for binds double controllers, why not do something like that on split?
On split, it's not really necessary just because you don't have to. Fighting off a retake is not as hard unless you're playing XSET, apparently, because their retakes are really annoying. But yeah, split is kind of like you take the site and then you hold the site. It's not like you have to extend your control. We used to do it on Ascent and it worked really well. Ascent is tough because mid is so big that you kind of need to take mid in steps. So you take like close mid and then you take deeper mid control to push them back into the extremities. So having double smokes is good for that because we really like to sometimes take control and then snap go into an execute depending on the info that we get. So that works really well in Ascent because if you find that 3 people are leaned towards B and you have someone inserted in mid, that person can cut off rotations and you can execute a site with 4 people and you still have, 2 or 3 smokes to do it.
Got it.
So double controller works on that map really well.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a great spot to go to another Twitter question. Let's see. Do you have anything already that you're eyeing up, Chris?
I do. So this one's in the chat here for a producer from Brent Carpenter who wants to know from Syyko, what are your thoughts on the 3 duelist players on some maps? So what comps or what maps do you like to see triple duelist, if at all?
We ran triple duelist on Icebox for a bit when we were just kind of learning how to pug the map and learn how it flows. I think it's viable on any map if you're willing to make it work. The way that we try and look at comp changes is not necessarily what you're gaining, right? Because with third duelist, you're gaining more fragging power for that third player, so you kind of got to adapt to playing a more aggressive style, but you're also losing something, right? So if you're putting in a third duelist, you're probably dropping your Sova on most maps, so you're losing that info character, or you're dropping your Sentinel, so you're losing that flank watching potential and the added CT defensive bonus where you can kind of turtle into the site with your utilities. So you kind of got to play a little bit more aggressive on both extremities. It's viable, but I still prefer to run support characters just because I'm more of a strategic guy. I like to run strats. I like to have default systems in places and have utility to fall back on mid-round to execute. It's cool to see, but it's just not my thing. is basically what I'm getting at. It can be done, just not for me.
Got it. Dan, I got another
All
one
right.
here from
Yeah.
Lou Valorant, and I think this is a great question. How do you grow as an in-game leader, and what is the best way to grow on calling strats mid-game or creating strats without a coach? So Taylor, would love to direct this to you first.
I think the IGL needs to be able to adapt to what the team needs, or vice versa. I think you need to find a team that fits your calling style. So, people look at Jordan as like this great basketball player, but they had 4 people around him that were just willing to put up with his shit because he was so good.
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people would have hated playing with Jordan. I think the IGL needs to find his or her style, and then find 4 players that can fit with it, which is hard to do. It doesn't always work. And there's some great IGLs out there who just haven't had the right teammates around them to make their style work. So I think as far as developing, watching as many demos as you can is important. Trying to think about why decisions are being made, what decisions could have been made. Establishing protocols is really important, especially in this game with how variable the utility usage is. Protocols are really important. And then setting goals. I think setting goals in a round, setting goals in a match, setting goals for a week of practice. I think that's all really important too.
I really like that goal setting portion of it. Syyko, what about you? Any advice you would give to someone who's on a team on the come up, even if they're in high school right now playing with friends? What are the steps that you would take immediately to improve your gameplay as an in-game leader?
Well, first off, hi Lou, I love you, bud. Second off, I think the biggest thing for an IGL in most of the teams that I've worked with, and even when I used to IGL as a player, buying into the system is important. And like Taylor hinted at, it's important to find players who are willing to buy into your system and are going to complement what you bring, or you complement and bring out their best abilities. So it's really important that when you're making calls that they're listening to them, whether they're the right calls or not. And it's important to do VOD review afterwards. What I always say is that, nitpicking mid-round or second guessing the IGL is never what you should be doing in a scrim or a match. There's a time and place for everything, and it's called VOD review. So make sure that even if you don't have a coach, you're sitting down with your players, you're watching the recording, you're looking at things as objectively as possible and trying to keep emotions to a minimum and just saying, look, how can we improve this round? What was the call that was made? Identify the call from the IGL. Was it a good call, first of all, yes or no? If it wasn't a good call, what's a better call that could be made? And just have discourse as a team, be willing to take input. The IGL doesn't have to be necessarily the smartest person on the team. He's just the one that you're trusting to have the analytical read and speak up and have the voice to direct the players around him.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I think it's interesting because it's all about. I think this is one of the biggest thing with players is that where is the emotional investment, and it's interesting that some players will react really badly to if they are having a bad time and lose sight of the fact that they're supposed to. Maybe you can't change anything during the performance, as you say. It's like after the performance. But talking about emotional investment, we've got a question here from Heraclinus in the chat. How are you guys emotionally investing for the future of this game? He asks, where will you see Valorant heading in 10 years?
I'm personally all in. I think that it'll grow. I think that they want to franchise it like they have with LCS. I think LCS has found great success both in viewership and in terms of career health for its competitors and coaches. And if they transition into that as successfully as they did with League of Legends, then they're going to do a great job. So I personally, am all into this endeavor for the next few years to see where it takes us. So far, XSET has been very supportive of me and our team, and we're looking forward to what these next few years bring.
Yeah, I think I have full faith that Riot is going to continue to make this a tier 1 esport, and when we get those LAN competitions, we'll only see the viewership increase. I think Valorant's Twitch viewership has maintained and grown in a really steady manner, which is important. And I'm lucky enough to have 2 of like the biggest streamers on my team now. Sabrosa getting 6,000-7,000 viewers on his own, and Wardell sometimes getting up to 12,000 viewers on his own. So I think that I think it's growing in a really healthy way, in a natural way, and I think that's what Riot wanted. They wanted this natural community to build, and the competition only makes it more fun. I mean, the storylines that we've had have been really awesome through the first year, so I'm sure it's only going to get better the second year, and then as we get into potential partner program or whatever Riot wants to do, I'm really excited for it.
All right, I got two final questions, and they're both predictions here, Dan. So I'm going to jump in with the first one. Challengers 2 predictions, guys. We got 8 teams playing for some serious money. That, of course, has been delayed Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday for the event. It's not starting today. You can sit back, relax, finish shoveling your driveway like man silly. But as we take a look at the bracket here, fellas, who is the favorite to win it? Who are your top 3? Let's start with Tailored here because Syyko, he's a little bit more emotionally invested.
I mean, Sentinels has the chemistry to carry them to the moon. Definitely have the chemistry to carry them through this bracket. That team is like an anomaly amongst all other teams, I think. And to me, they're the number 1 team in North America right now. I think that XSET could have trouble against Envy. I feel like it's either going to be close and Envy will win or XSET will blow them out. But it all depends if Envy wants to show up that day. And then FaZe is always tough when you get to the end of an event because FaZe is like full of these high tier competitors. They might not have the structure that all the other teams have, but they have the experience to stay calm and maximize their individual skill. So we'll see how that goes. I think Sentinels will make it through on that side of the bracket,
Okay.
and XSET's clearly the team to watch for. On the bottom side of the bracket, I'm curious to see how Gen G does against like these teams like LG or Immortals, where Gen G typically struggles a little more against the lower tier teams than they do against the higher tier teams. But the addition of Kenny of Kusta is a really good one for them, I think, and their addition of MCE, the new coach, has been really good too. So curious to see how they'll do. Immortals and LG, I still don't see the potential for them to make it to the end of an event, but anything could happen. And then 100 Thieves is like, I'm still waiting to see how consistent they can stay. I know Nick has been in and out of practice and matches, so
Being a dad, busy man.
yeah, obviously his priorities are with his family, so we'll see.
Tailored, I need the official final 3 though. Who's going?
Final 3?
Top 3. It's double elimination.
Oh, okay. Sentinels. I'd say Sentinels, Envy, and 100 Thieves.
Sentinels, Envy, 100 Thieves.
Play it safe.
Okay, going with
Yeah.
tried and true. What about
Sorry,
you,
Syyko.
Mr. XSET Coach Syyko? I need your top 3 here for Challengers 2.
Well, I think as with all events, especially in Valorant, it's all matchup based, right? Like if TSM hadn't gotten matched up with us and got a team that they match up better against, like maybe FaZe, then they'd probably be in here. But matchups aside, and taking my own team out of this, I think the 3 strongest teams on paper are Sentinels. Obviously, I think they're number 1 still. They've dropped some maps against teams or some series against teams recently, but it always seems like they're doing it because they're just not giving their 100% that day or whatever. It always seems like they're just right there and they could have won it if they wanted to. For whatever reason, they just always look so strong. For 2 and 3, I'd probably say 100 Thieves are always really solid as long as Nitro's playing. Their strategy is just unmatched, even by us right now. So, and then 3, I think Immortals are just on a rampage right now. I think their new roster is really clicking. I think they have enough strategy to complement the sheer firepower that they have to go really deep in this.
I like that pick. All right. We got some variety in our picks. Dan, do you want to be the tiebreaker? Or should we just wrap it right here?
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree with Taylor's in terms of just like playing it safe. I do think though that XS like an amazing dark horse pick for anyone who's into a dark horse pick. But yeah, what about you, Chris? Where do you stand?
I'm with Taylor on the Sentinels pick through and through. I'm honestly hoping for the kind of new rosters to break through in this one and just make the third challengers even nuttier than this one is. I want to see more from Gen G, but I'm with Syyko. I think Immortals is going to look good in this one again. I think FaZe Clan is not going to pull it off, but I would like to see it. And I think this is Envy's bounce back tournament. I think we're going to see Envy. But as the chat mentioned, it is the top 4 that matters. That's what lock into the next tournament. It's not just the top 3. But remember, guys, you got several days. It's not happening tonight. It's kicking off on Saturday for the first day of action.
For sure. And with that said, it's time for us to close the show down today. So thank you to all of our guests. Before we do that hard exit, tell me what you guys are up to. If people want to see more, are you guys streaming? You're making content? I'll start with you, Taylor, and we can go to Syyko. What are you up to?
Well, I actually just got my Twitch partnership, but
Congrats.
I don't stream anymore. I haven't streamed in months, so I'm not sure why that just came through. But I guess you could follow my stream. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, and I'm just focusing on. I just moved. Not clearly, no one knows what my place looks like, but I just moved, so that's been taking up a lot of my time. But yeah, just focusing on this next open qualifier and trying to get to the Masters event. That's all that's on my plate currently.
Your new mansion looks great, by the way, at least from what I can see here. Syyko, what's next for you, bud?
So for me, I'm mainly active on Twitter more than anything. Not very good at social media, so I just try and keep it to one. But I am working on cooking up a YouTube series for mainly geared towards like ranked players looking to make the move into competing with a team. So hoping to launch that within the next month or 2, but we'll see how timelines line up. I'm moving here in a week or so as well. You can't see it, but there's boxes all over my apartment right now. So we'll see. But follow me on Twitter, and I'll be posted about it when the time comes.
Excellent.
Awesome. What about you, Chris? You're a busy man.
For me, I've just been playing a ton of Halo CE on stream to about 26 people. It's been fantastic. Watching a ton of Valorant. I'm excited for this weekend. And also just, I think it's been nice to not cast for a little bit and just be able to listen to everyone else who's been on the mics. But I'm excited for things to get serious. We're getting closer to that major, and I feel like the first challengers, everyone was kind of relaxed. The second one, you can see the intensity stepping up a little bit through the qualifiers. This next one is going to be nutty going into the major. Are we going to see TSM at the major, Taylor? Can you tell the people it's going to be okay?
Yeah, it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay, guys. There we go. That's it for me.
Hey, maybe Puckett's going to follow me back on Twitter finally.
Oh.
Did I just get
I'm not one of the lucky like 2,400 people that you follow.
Listen, you got to be a pro player. Pro players only. Sorry.
Oh my God.
I'm unfollowing Boxer Launders to follow you. I got this. No worries.
Okay. That's fine with me.
All right. Well, with that said, of course, thank you again to you, Taylor, and to you, Syyko, and as always, Chris, for joining us on today's show. Make sure you check in on our social media, follow us at Immortal Minds, and, make sure that you're keeping your eye out for any future episodes that'll be popping up. As always, this will be going out on YouTube and in audio format, all the usual business. So make sure that if you did miss today's episode that you go and catch it on the YouTubes. But otherwise, thank you to our technical producer. We've got the guy who's pretty new, actually, working with us, Luke. Do you want to bring up your Twitter, Luke?
Yeah, do it.
You're searching for some
Everyone follow this legend.
extra gigs at the moment. So let's give some Luke some love. And also, also shout outs to, Bree Rivers as well for producing the show and, making all the things happen. Nothing would happen without, if I was doing stuff, let's be honest, if I was organizing things, nothing would happen. So thanks to everyone who makes the show possible. Thanks to you guys for watching and all the new subs today. And we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.